2022 is finally here, the release year of the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Safe to say, the wait for this game has been humongous, especially considering it's an asset reusing sequel. But I'm here to explain why I absolutely do not mind waiting for this game. Don't get me wrong, it's been pretty agonizing considering how bloody brilliant the game looks. But the longer the wait is, the better. Quite obviously, the longer they spend on this game, the more polished and full of stuff to explore it will be. We've already seen one extra layer they're adding to the world of the game, in the Sky Islands. But bear in mind there's even more layers that they could be adding to the world, especially since the development time is going to be around 5 years, and the last times they've done asset reusing sequels, it's been around 2 years between games, and in Majora's Mask they created another entire separate world to Hyrule, Termina. This considered, surely there's even more than just the new Sky World in the world of Hyrule that we're yet to see. But what more could there be to this game? That's what I'll be delving into in this video. I hope you enjoy. Maybe the ways in which they plan to expand Hyrule are both down as well as up. The first and second trailers have both hinted at underground exploration, which would be absolutely awesome considering the very lackluster handful of caves in the original Breath of the Wild. Despite being lackluster in number and size, some of the caves that we did have showed massive potential for what the caves could be like if the idea was expanded upon. Furthermore, in Breath of the Wild there was no underwater exploration at all. This was certainly a shame because there was quite large potential for this too. Lake Hylia and the East Reservoir Lake always intrigued me in Breath of the Wild, as I wondered what these huge masses of water could hide beneath them. Especially since, in that one cutscene where we saw Divine Beast of Aruta sinking into the reservoir and then surfacing in one of the nearby rivers. It just made me think about how there must be passages beneath the surface of the reservoir with enough space for a divine beast to travel around it, and how awesome it would be to explore and see what's down there. The massive amount of potential here makes me think that another way they could be expanding the world of Hyrule is through proper underwater exploration. If it's true that the game could involve time travel and take place in the past or present as people such as myself have been theorizing, they could be hard at work updating existing towns or rebuilding ones which we only see in ruins in the first game, which could also be taking a lot of time. Since there was also quite a bit of a universal backlash about the approach to dungeons in Breath of the Wild, they could also be implementing full, traditional dungeons into existing and new places in Hyrule, which would obviously be more expansive and each have different theming. These would maybe even be a couple of hours long each, which would be massive compared to the 30 minutes it took to clear each divine beast in the first game. These new dungeons would also be packed full of new puzzles, which brings me quite nicely onto the next section of this video. They're almost certainly also adding loads of new elaborate puzzles which use Link's new runes in the forms of shrines, Koroks or their likely replacements, and of course the new dungeons as previously mentioned. Considering how elaborate the shrine puzzles were in the first game, especially some of the DLC ones, and the fact that Nintendo never does the same thing twice, they're probably hard at work creating a lot of brand new puzzles for us to solve in the sequel. The runes which are going to be used in the puzzles have already proven themselves to be more elaborate than the few we had in the first game. The time reversal and burrowing mechanics also have so much potential to be used in some very intricate puzzle designs on their own. And if you consider that there's almost certainly even more of these runes that Link will be able to use, the possibilities are endless. If they also make Zelda a playable or companion character who uses the Sheikah Slate from the first game, there could also be puzzles which require both characters to work together to solve them with their different abilities. I can imagine puzzles similar to those in Luigi's Mansion 3, where we had Luigi and Luigi, who both had different capabilities of entering different areas and different abilities which allowed them to interact with different objects to each other for more complex puzzle sequences. It would be awesome to have to solve trickier puzzles where we have to switch between Link and Zelda for the shrines, Koroks, and the full-on dungeons. Another thing that we can be relatively certain on is the fact that they're adding some more enemy types. We've already seen 2 and they both look awesome. So they could be spending time on making even more intriguing enemies for us to encounter in the game. We've also seen a new spin on enemy camps in the Talus enemy camp, which is a very cool spin on 2 ideas used in the first game. But the way they tease this makes me think we could see even more of this. Imagine a Hinox being used as an enemy camp. That would be absolutely mega, and there could be even more giant enemies that we're yet to see that could be used in this way. We also know that they're adding new weapons and tools into the game, as seen mainly in the second trailer. They're probably overhauling the entire armor collection from the first game with updated, new and improved designs. The new weapons we've seen have been really cool too. We've seen Link wielding a dagger and a flamethrower, which are both new weapon types. This has me very excited for other new weapons they could be introducing into this game. They might even be adding some new weapon effects. Similar to how in the first game we had flame, ice and electric swords, which would be an amazing thing that they could expand upon with new quote-unquote elements. The developers could also expand on how armor sets had bonuses, which made Link resistant to heat, cold and electricity, or boosted his attack power, stealth or climb speed. The sky's the limit for new armor effects they could add. It's also possible that entirely new systems could be added, such as crafting, which would make total sense considering the number of items you're able to collect on your adventure in Breath of the Wild, which will certainly be the same in the sequel. And maybe, as well as the skydiving mechanic, we'll see even more new movement options and abilities being added in. There really are little boundaries with what new mechanics and items they could be adding to this game. There were some complaints after the first game about the way the story was handled. It took place primarily in the past, with not huge amounts of things happening in the present day other than restoring the divine beasts, saving local towns from them in the process, and of course actually defeating Ganon. I doubt they're going to do the same thing as the last game where they had a 100-year time skip, so the story will probably be handled differently and be much more about present events. The main focus of the last game was the new open world approach, so it could be argued that the story took more of a side role to accommodate for this entirely new game approach. But now the developers and the players are used to this, so there's a chance they make the story more of a focal point again. This would mean more story-driven gameplay scenarios, cutscenes and voice acting, which all take up a lot of development time. Considering there's this much potential for the game, and I've been able to speculate for a good 7 minutes without even going into crazy detail on all the things they could be potentially adding to the game based on the trailers and simply how the first game could be improved on, it's no wonder they've been working on it for so long. The longer we have to wait for this game, the more puzzles there will be to complete, the more polished the gameplay will be, and the more stunning scenery there will be to marvel at and explore. It's clear why this game is taking so long for them to make, and even clearer to me that the wait will almost certainly be worth it in the end. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching my second video on the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. If you enjoyed, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing, because I have plenty more Breath of the Wild sequel and Nintendo videos in the works. Stay safe out there everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.